let me first ask you what you think. What you think Merkel is going to say to Stoltenberg about, Vladimir Putin in terms of backing Belarus and in terms of the alleged assassination attempts around the continent?
Well, I think she will make it very clear to him that this is a completely unacceptable operation or incident. I think she will also remind him of the fact that Russia has moved against opponents and critics in the past, including an assassination here in Berlin of a Georgian citizen last year. So I'm pretty sure that this will be a point that she makes very clear to him, that it is completely unacceptable that critics, opponents in Russia, even beyond the borders of Russia, cannot feel safe.
And we're looking for Chancellor Angela Merkel and Jens Stoltenberg to start speaking this morning. We'll bring images of that as we get them. Let me ask you, good morning to you, Joerg. Let me ask you what Russia wants to see in Belarus. Do you think Russia has concluded that it is time for Lukashenko to step aside, or is Russia convinced it can assist Lukashenko to stay in post?
Well, frankly, I think we don't know exactly, and perhaps even Russia itself doesn't fully know. I think the Kremlin was taken by surprise by these developments. I think they expected Alexander Lukashenko to assert his presidency in those elections, if you want to call it that. But they did expect him to come out weakened, given growing social discontent. Now they have a situation whereby his future in the presidency or in the leadership is in question. And I think to some extent they're struggling to find a response. Over the last 2 weeks and a little more, we've seen quite ambivalent signals coming out of the Kremlin. On the one hand, Putin congratulates Lukashenko the day after the elections. On the other hand, there is very open criticism of how Lukashenko handled these elections, the police brutality that ensued afterwards. So at the moment, I have the impression that Russia is still defining its response. It has already dispatched people to Belarus to influence on the inside the situation of the country. But frankly, at the moment, no one knows exactly. I think there is a clear expectation that Russia will interfere in the further course of these developments. And many of us, frankly, are just hoping that this will be a constructive engagement, perhaps through a multilateral format like the OSCE. But we cannot rule out that we'll act unilaterally in a more forceful way.
We are looking, by the way, at live pictures of Stoltenberg and Merkel speaking. Merkel kicked it off talking about the concerns they have surrounding Turkey and Greece right now. Indeed, Joerg, that's a very worrying topic, probably more worrying in terms of the fireworks we could see more immediately. What do you think we're going to see as Greece aims to extend its borders into the Mediterranean, and Turkey says, any country that's messing with it should be worried about its further existence?
Well, what we've seen in the last weeks is a lot of unilateral action by either side in this dispute. The German government has been trying to mediate here, but apparently to no effect so far. This is obviously a very tense situation, especially also in the context of the visit of Stoltenberg in Berlin today, because both are NATO members. Both are countries that have an uneasy relationship, but do find themselves in the same security alliance. So for that reason, I fully understand that this is an issue very high up on the agenda in the talks today. At the same time, I'm a bit worried that this may completely overshadow what is happening around Belarus and on the eastern flank of NATO.
Yes, and getting back to the stories around Russia, I mean, there are many reasons why Germany and Russia have a tense relationship at the moment. The attempted cyber attack on the Bundestag, Belarus, and now the issue surrounding Navalny. I mean, why do you think that Alexei Navalny was allowed to leave, or he was allowed to leave the country at the insistence of his family and friends for treatment, Joerg? The Russians could have stopped him leaving, perhaps.
Well, there's various interpretations to that. I mean, one is obviously that the Kremlin took to damage control in this situation. They've seen the risk here of this even more seriously impacting the already bad reputation that Russia has for its approach to any critic and opponent.
Right.
And as I mentioned before, there have been serious incidents with regard to Russian critics and Kremlin opponents in the past. So one explanation may simply be its damage control.
And not seriously successful attempts at assassinations, if indeed that was the case, right? I wonder, after all of this, you know, Merkel has confronted Putin about the annexation of Crimea, but in the end, Germany didn't really do a lot about it. Merkel has confronted Putin in terms of the alleged assassination attempts, but really hasn't done anything about it. Now Merkel is concerned about the violence in Belarus. And at the end of the day, Germany is still essentially, at least partially, funding Vladimir Putin's antics through Nord Stream 2, or intends to, hopes to help send him money for that pipeline. Why do you think the Germans continue to, I mean, is it just the fact that they want access to cheaper energy? At the end of the day, is cheaper energy worth allowing Russia to do the things it does?
Well, I think energy is obviously an important item for Germany. This is a country that has very few resources on its own, except for renewables. So the German economy and industry does depend on a serious portion of energy imports. Russia, and prior to that, the Soviet Union, have been reasonably reliable energy suppliers. So I think there's quite some inertia in all of that, not just in German politics, but also in German business. At the same time, I think that what German politics completely underestimated is how politically charged, especially that pipeline, Nord Stream 2, is. It could have known better, because there is a pipeline called Nord Stream 1 that was already controversial with Germany's neighbors to the east. Nonetheless, it decided to move ahead with that second pipeline. I think it completely underestimated how much of a political liability this will be, and it has severely damaged German credibility, because what it adds to is an utter contradiction. On the one hand, Germany is a strong supporter of its eastern neighbors, also of developments in countries like Ukraine. Germany has also been outspoken in solidarity with the Belarusian people in recent days and weeks. And at the same time, it basically bolsters Russia as a regional hegemon that reserves a veto right in the affairs of countries like Belarus and Ukraine. This is a contradiction that so far nobody in Germany has been able to undo.